I never thought the last time I stood in my parents' doorway would feel like standing on trial. My hands held a box of homemade cupcakes, my mom's favorite, and a wrapped scarf I'd gotten for my dad. It was just supposed to be a casual visit, maybe a small step toward healing. Instead, my father looked at me with that familiar coldness, the kind that made even the sunniest day feel like winter. "You're not family anymore," he said flatly, not even glancing at the gifts in my arms. "Don't come again." Behind him, my mother stood with her arms crossed and a smirk dancing on her lips, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "She deserves that," she muttered, loud enough for me to hear. I froze. Not in confusion. No, I'd seen this coming. Just not so blunt, not so final. My throat tightened, but I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. Instead, I nodded once. Slow. Calm. The kind of nod that said, "Got it." Message received. I set the gifts gently on the porch railing, turned on my heel, and walked away. Each step I took back toward my car felt heavy, but not with sadness. With clarity, with a fire slowly lighting in my chest. The kind of fire that doesn't burn things down, but builds something stronger. They thought they were shutting a door on me. What they didn't know was I'd already outgrown the house. And now, I was about to build something they'd never be able to ignore. I don't remember a single moment from childhood where I truly felt like I belonged. While most kids had bedtime stories, warm hugs, or at least someone clapping at their school plays, I had silence. Or worse, criticism. My brother, Zane, was the golden boy. He could break a window, skip class, or talk back to teachers, and my parents would just laugh it off. "Boys will be boys," my mom would say, ruffling his hair like he was a prince. Me, I got scolded for breathing too loud. I remember one Thanksgiving. Zane knocked over a whole tray of food. My mom brushed it off with a smile and said, "At least you were helping, sweetheart." A few minutes later, I accidentally dropped a spoon, and she snapped, "Be useful for once, Mira." It was always like that. At birthday parties, Zane got the best gifts. If he wanted my slice of cake, I was expected to give it up because you're the older one, or don't be selfish. Every chore landed on me. If the dog had an accident, it was my fault. If Zane lied, I was blamed. I was the built-in babysitter, the cleaner, the quiet one. My mother? Icy. She didn't yell much. She didn't need to. Her silence cut deeper than any scream. She would glance at me like I was something she tolerated, not someone she loved. Her affection was a currency she never spent on me. My father was always in the background, silent, nodding along with whatever my mother said. He never defended me, never stopped her, never once said, "Mira, I'm proud of you." So I learned to disappear. I stayed in my room. I read books. I kept my report cards perfect. I tried so hard to be impressive. I thought if I just did well enough, achieved enough, maybe they'd finally look at me and see a daughter they could love. But no matter how high I climbed, their eyes were fixed on Zane. It took me years to understand. It wasn't about how good I was. It was about who they chose to value. And they never chose me. Looking back now, I realize I was never truly part of that family. I was born into their house, but I was never invited into their hearts. I moved out the day I turned 18. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tearful hugs or parting advice. Just a silent breakfast, my father buried in the newspaper, and my mother rinsing a plate like I wasn't even there. I walked out with a second-hand suitcase and a heart that still, somehow, hoped one day they'd miss me. I worked 2 jobs while going to community college. I stocked shelves at night, tutored math in the afternoons, and did freelance design work whenever I could squeeze it in. There were weeks I lived on instant noodles and shared one bedroom with 3 other girls just to make rent. But you know what? I never complained, because for the first time I wasn't invisible. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every accomplishment, no matter how small, was mine too. No one overshadowed me. No one dismissed me with a cold glance. I built my world brick by brick, fueled by rejection and this stubborn fire that said, "I'll prove them wrong." After college, I landed an internship at a marketing firm. From there I climbed. Not by luck. Not because anyone opened doors for me, but because I refused to let any of them close. By 27, I owned my own digital branding agency. I had 10 employees, 6-figure contracts, and my name on the office door. I bought my first condo in cash. I donated to charities. I was by every measure successful. But success doesn't fill the holes family leaves behind. Every milestone made me ache. I wanted to call someone to hear, "We're proud of you, Mira." I wanted to host a holiday dinner where I finally sat at the center of the table. I wanted to matter to the people who had spent their lives reminding me I didn't. So I sent invites, birthday cards, holiday gifts. I still showed up to family events when I was included, smiling, offering help, hoping someone would finally say, "You did it." They never did. My mother would glance at my handbag and mutter, "Must be nice to waste money on labels." My father would ask about my business, then nod blankly and turn away before I finished answering. Zane, of course, always arrived late and left with leftovers, acting like the star of every room. I kept showing up, though, because some part of me, the part that still wanted to be loved, kept whispering, maybe next time. But eventually, even the strongest heart realizes when it's not wanted. And mine had been bruised for long enough. It wasn't like I hadn't tried. Over and over again, I kept reaching out, hoping something would shift. I sent them thoughtful gifts on holidays, things they once mentioned in passing. A record player for Dad after he said he missed vinyl. A handmade silk scarf for Mom, just like the one she used to admire when we passed the boutiques downtown. No notes asking for praise. Just love. Quiet and hopeful. I'd call and ask how they were. I'd offer help, like when their roof needed repairs or when Dad had trouble with his new phone. Each time, I'd hear that stiff politeness, that cold distance, the kind that says, "You're not welcome, but we won't say it out loud." They never reached out first. Not even once. But I told myself, maybe they don't know how. Maybe they're just not expressive people. Maybe I need to try harder. So I tried harder. Then came the wedding. My cousin Priya and I grew up like sisters. We'd build forts out of couch cushions, whisper secrets under blankets, cry on each other's shoulders after middle school heartbreaks. Even after I moved out, she stayed in touch. Or at least she used to. When I heard she was getting married, I waited for the invitation to arrive. Days passed, then weeks. I thought maybe it got lost. Maybe she had the wrong address. So I called Mom. "Oh, Mira," she said, her voice syrupy and fake. "It's just a small thing. You know, immediate family only." Immediate family. The words didn't hurt at first. They sat there in the air, like smoke, until I realized what they meant. I wasn't considered immediate family. I wasn't considered family at all. But Zane was going. So was every aunt and uncle, every cousin, even their neighbor from 3 houses down. I saw the pictures later on Facebook. My parents beaming in the front row. My brother making a toast. Priya in her gown, radiant, and not a single message from her. It felt like erasure. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just closed my laptop, walked into the kitchen, and stared out the window for a long time. Something in me cracked, but instead of breaking, it hardened. That was the last time I tried. The last time I bent over backward for people who made it clear I didn't belong. I had loved them enough for a lifetime, and they hadn't even offered basic decency in return. So I stopped. I stopped calling, stopped sending gifts, stopped waiting for their affection like a child outside a locked door. Because love should never feel like begging, and I was done begging. The confrontation wasn't planned. I didn't walk into my parents' house that day with some dramatic speech in mind. I just wanted answers. Closure. Maybe even a little truth. I rang the doorbell, holding a small basket of sweets. Diwali was a few days away, and while I knew they wouldn't invite me, a part of me still believed in tradition, in family, in decency. The door opened and Dad stood there. No smile, no greeting, just a cold glance before he stepped aside wordlessly to let me in. Mom sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't noticed I arrived. But I knew she had. She always did. I placed the basket on the coffee table. "I wanted to wish you both a happy Diwali," I said softly, my voice trying to stay calm. Mom didn't look up. "We're busy," she murmured. "I know," I said, swallowing the knot forming in my throat. "But I need to talk." That's when Dad finally spoke. "If it's about the wedding, don't start. We already told you. Only close family was invited." "Close family?" I repeated, my voice sharper now. "Do you hear yourself?" Mom raised her eyes then, smug, like she had been waiting for this moment. You're the one who distanced yourself, Mira. You left. You don't visit. You live in your little bubble. I left because you gave me no choice, I snapped. You've never treated me like part of this family. I tried again and again, but nothing was ever enough for either of you. Dad crossed his arms. You're too sensitive. Always have been. That's your problem. Everything's an issue. No, I said quietly. You know what the problem is? You all act like I never existed unless you need something from me. You talk about me like I'm a burden, and yet somehow my success, my money, still makes its way into your conversations. He glared at me, jaw tight. You don't get to come in here and lecture us. And you, I turned to Mom. You've never even pretended to like me. You treat my brother like a prince, and me like I'm disposable. She didn't deny it. Instead, she just smiled, tilting her head slightly. Maybe because he never turned his back on us. I laughed, short and bitter. Turn my back? You made it impossible to stay. You shut me out every chance you got. And when I still kept showing up, you pretended I was invisible. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that chokes. And then Dad said it. Maybe it's time you stop coming around at all. You're not part of this family anymore. His words didn't sting the way I thought they would. They landed like bricks, but not on my chest. On the wall between us. A wall that had been built slowly over years of coldness, silence, and rejection. He had just added the final stone. Mom looked pleased, her lips curled in that same mocking smirk I'd seen since childhood. I looked at both of them, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I didn't want their love anymore. I stood tall. No tears. No begging. I just said, then don't ask me for anything again. Not money. Not favors. Not my time. Nothing. Dad opened his mouth, probably to protest, but I was already walking away. Out the door. Down the steps. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. The letter didn't come easily. It took me 3 days, countless drafts, and several long walks around my apartment just to start writing. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because for the first time in my life, I wanted to say it perfectly, clearly, without apology, without softening the truth to protect the very people who never protected me. I titled it simply, Goodbye. Then I began, Dear Mom and Dad, this is not a letter asking for understanding, love, or closure. This is not a plea. This is a declaration. For as long as I can remember, I've been trying to earn a place in your hearts. I was the daughter who studied hard, worked double shifts, smiled through the pain, and kept showing up, even when you pushed me away. I sent gifts you never acknowledged. I called only to be met with cold tones and shorter silences. I let you guilt-trip me into funding repairs, bills, and birthdays, because a part of me still believed, maybe foolishly, that family meant something. But family, I've learned, isn't something you're born into. It's something that's built through love, support, and mutual respect. And in that sense, we've never really been a family, have we? I've spent my entire life chasing approval from people who treated me like an outsider. I was never the favorite. I was barely tolerated. My wins were ignored and my pain was mocked. You cheered for my brother, made excuses for his mistakes, and built him a pedestal while leaving me to climb alone. And yet, when I succeeded, you smiled, not with pride, but with calculation. What could Mira give us now? What would she pay for? So let me make this easy. Nothing. I will no longer be the emergency ATM. I will no longer take late-night calls to bail out problems I didn't create. I will no longer send birthday money, festival gifts, or plane tickets. I owe you nothing, because you gave me nothing of value except a reason to become who I am without you. I don't write this to hurt you. I write this so that, for once, you hear me, unfiltered, unashamed, and finally free. If someday you wonder where I went, remember this letter. Remember who pushed me away. I wish you peace, but not access. Goodbye, Mira. I sat back after the final sentence, reading every word with trembling fingers. Not because I was afraid of their reaction. I knew what it would be. Rage, denial, blame. But none of that mattered now. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I printed the letter, folded it neatly, and placed it in a simple white envelope. No return address. No frills. Just a stamp and their home address, the same one I used to write on birthday cards when I was a child, hoping they'd smile. As I dropped the envelope into the mailbox, a strange stillness settled over me. Not sadness, not guilt, just peace. Back home, I opened my phone and blocked both their numbers. Then my brothers. Then aunts, uncles, anyone who used family as a weapon. I didn't cry. Instead, I made a cup of tea, curled up on my couch, and let the silence wrap around me like a warm blanket. Because this time it wasn't empty. It was mine. 3 months passed without a single word from me. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. And in that silence, something strange happened. I started to feel alive. I was no longer waiting for an apology that would never come. No longer stretching myself thin to earn a love that was never offered freely. I was just living. Peacefully. Purposefully. Until the emails started. The first one came from my father. Just a short, awkward subject line. Can we talk? The message itself was brief. Hope you're well. We should reconnect. Love, Dad. No mention of the letter. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a weak attempt to slide back into my life as if the past hadn't occurred. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another email. This time longer. Your mother and I have been going through a tough time. I lost my job last month. The company downsized. We didn't want to tell you before, but things are hard. We could use some help if you're in a position to. Still no apology. Just need. I marked it as unread and closed my laptop. The texts began the next day. First my mom, then my dad. Then my cousin, who I hadn't spoken to since I was excluded from her wedding. They all carried the same message, just dressed differently. Your parents need you. You're doing well now, right? Don't turn your back on family. Family. The word burned every time I read it. The same people who told me I wasn't family anymore now remembered the word when it was convenient. One night, I came home from work and found 2 familiar figures standing outside my building. My parents. My mother wore that same expression, tight-lipped and proud, but her eyes darted nervously. My father looked older, smaller, like someone who had been hollowed out from the inside. Mira, he said, stepping forward, hands slightly raised like I might run. Please, just talk to us. I didn't stop walking. Mira, my mom snapped, still holding onto her pride like armor. You can't just ignore us. I reached the door and turned. You told me I wasn't family, I said calmly. So I'm treating you like strangers. But we need you, my father shouted, desperation leaking through the cracks. I gave you everything. I laughed, soft, bitter, and broken. No, you gave me trauma, and I turned it into strength. You didn't build this life, I did. And now you don't get to collect from it. I entered my building without another word. No screaming. No tears. Just silence. Later that night, I reread the last email my father sent. This time I didn't feel guilt. I felt closure. They hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They were just scared. And broke. And I was free. I didn't owe them answers. Or explanations. I didn't owe them money or second chances. The silence wasn't revenge, it was protection. From their chaos. From their cycle. They made a choice. Now they would live with it. I used to think blood was everything. That no matter how hard it got, family ties would somehow bring people back together. That if I was just better, kinder, more forgiving, more successful, they'd come around. They'd see me. But standing in the kitchen of my new home, laughter floating in from the living room, I realized something deeply freeing. Love is an ode. It's chosen. And I had finally chosen mine. After everything, after the letter, the silence, and the pain, I didn't spiral. I didn't sit by my phone waiting for the next guilt message. I didn't doubt my worth. I simply started living. I bought a house, not to prove anything, not to show off, just because I wanted a space that felt like mine. Warm wood floors, big windows, sunlight everywhere. A home where I could breathe. And I filled it not with antiques or family heirlooms, but with people who made me feel seen. Like Lena, my best friend since college, who brought over her dog and a homemade casserole the very first night I moved in. I don't care if you don't have plates yet, she said. We're celebrating. Or Maya, my coworker turned sister in spirit, who painted my guest room with me until 1 a.m., music blaring, paint in our hair. "This is our sanctuary," she said. "No ghosts allowed." Then there was Jonah, my mentor and now dear friend, who showed up with a bottle of champagne and said, "Tamira," for burning bridges that led nowhere. And one by one, piece by piece, I built a world that felt like mine. The first holiday I hosted in my new home was small, but unforgettable. The scent of cinnamon and roasted vegetables filled the air. My friends came early to help decorate. String lights around the porch, candles on the table, mismatched chairs that somehow made everything feel more personal. We laughed. We told stories. There were no sharp looks, no snide remarks, no cold silences. Only warmth. Only love. When dinner was served, we raised our glasses. Jonah clinked his fork against his wine glass. "I propose a toast," he said, grinning, "to found families and the people who remind us we were never the problem." Everyone cheered. I lifted my glass last. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about my parents. Not really. I wasn't thinking about the years I spent trying to earn their love or the ache of their absence. I was thinking about the life I'd built, the peace, the laughter, the ease. "To peace," I said, "and to choosing ourselves." That night, after everyone left and the house had quieted, I sat by the fireplace with a mug of tea. For the first time in years, I felt completely at home. No pretending, no proving, just me. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who cried quietly in her room after being called selfish for wanting attention, the one who bought gifts she couldn't afford just to get a smile from her mother, the one who kept showing up, even when she was told not to. I wanted to hold her hand. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay. That one day, she'd stop chasing people who only wanted to hurt her. That she'd stop apologizing for breathing too loudly, for dreaming too big, for existing outside of what they expected. That one day, she'd have a table of her own, a seat she didn't have to beg for, and a family of her choosing who'd save her a spot every time. I still get messages sometimes. A distant cousin tagging me in old photos. A number I don't recognize asking, "Is this Mira?" I never reply, not because I'm angry, but because I'm finally at peace. And sometimes silence is the loudest kind of closure. They chose to let me go, and in doing so, they made space for a version of me that no longer needs their permission to feel worthy. I don't carry resentment anymore, just gratitude for the lesson, and freedom for the life I get to live now. When I look around my home, at the faces that fill it, I don't feel broken or abandoned. I feel full, chosen, whole. This is my real family, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Darkness was already closing in when they made it worse. I had just gotten home from the hospital, a panic attack that hit like a heart attack. My boss had let me go that morning after I missed too many shifts. My savings were gone. My lights were about to be cut off. I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mom. I didn't even ask for much. Just help covering rent for 1 month. Just time to breathe. Just a moment of family. She let me speak. Then she exhaled, long and dramatic. "You're on your own now, Jasmine." I froze. She didn't stop there. She laughed, a tight, bitter laugh. "You're grown. You made your choices. We've helped enough." I could hear the TV in the background, the clink of her wine glass, the comfort of her peace, while mine was falling apart. I asked if Dad was there. She handed the phone to him without a word. "We won't waste another dollar on a failure," he said. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "What happened?" Not, "Are you okay?" Just that. Then I heard Grandpa mutter in the background, loud enough for me to catch every syllable. "Some children just bring shame. Maybe she should have been more like Derek." That was it. The final stone thrown. The comparison I was raised under, now weaponized as a reason to leave me drowning. I didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't scream or defend myself. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. I turned off my phone, packed a backpack, and left the apartment that night with nothing but a hoodie, a laptop, and the quietest anger I've ever known. Not rage, not revenge, something colder. A promise I whispered into the dark. You will never have another chance to throw me away. I stayed on my best friend's couch for the first month, got a gig washing dishes at a food truck, started teaching myself UX design late at night when the city was quiet and no one was watching. I didn't tell anyone, didn't post on social media, didn't update my family. I let them believe I disappeared, that I failed. Because if that's what they needed to feel better, fine. Let them write their story. I was already building mine. In silence, in shadows, in power. My name is Jasmine. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when they said I was on my own, they were right. But they never imagined who I'd become with no one left to save me but me. And they definitely didn't expect that one day they'd come begging to the daughter they abandoned. I wasn't surprised when they cut me off. Not really. Because the truth is, I'd been disappearing in that house for years. Growing up, our family had a son. His name was Derek. My younger brother. The golden one. From the moment he could walk, they told him he was brilliant, gifted, destined for something great. From the moment I could walk, they told me to make room for him. Let Derek go first. Don't outshine your brother. Why can't you be more like him? Even my childhood report cards, straight A's, honor roll, art awards, were met with polite nods. Maybe a good job. But when Derek got a C+ in math, it was a family emergency. Tutors. Tears. Full-blown intervention. And yet, I loved him. That's the sickest part of it all. I loved my little brother. I defended him. Covered for him when he wrecked Dad's car at 17. Helped him study for his SATs. Co-signed on his first apartment lease when he forgot to tell anyone his credit was trash. And through it all, I stayed quiet. Because that's what forgotten daughters do. We convince ourselves that being useful is the same as being loved. Even when I was working 2 jobs and taking night classes, I never asked for help. I didn't want to be a burden. Not like they said I was. But when I finally did fall, when anxiety turned to panic attacks, when I couldn't afford rent, when my job let me go, I thought, maybe now, maybe they'll show up. I was wrong. Instead, they took that moment, my lowest point, and used it to confirm what they had always believed. That I was the family failure. That I didn't matter. That the one who held them together in silence didn't deserve saving. It hurt, but it also freed me. Because I stopped pretending. Stopped hoping. Stopped trying to earn what should have been given freely. Love. Support. A place. They treated me like a ghost, so I let them live in the haunted house they built without me. And while they continued pouring all their money, energy, and worship into Derek's dream life, I was quietly building mine from rubble. That's the thing about exile. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you. And I chose the latter. I found a cheap therapist who met me at odd hours. I enrolled in a free coding bootcamp online. I learned how to design wireframes, build mobile prototypes, pitch myself to clients, all while working part-time and eating instant noodles. No applause, no support, but finally no comparison. And day by day, gig by gig, I felt myself coming back, not as their daughter, as my own person, one who didn't need their permission to exist, or their praise to matter. And the best part? They never even saw it coming. Because while they were busy polishing their golden son's future, they didn't notice the girl they threw away was becoming the one thing they'd never be able to replace. There's a strange kind of power in being invisible. Once you realize no one's watching, you stop performing. And that's exactly how I rebuilt my life. In silence. I started small, washing dishes at a 24-hour diner. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me something steady, predictable. Humble work, honest money. I spent my nights smelling like fryer oil, my fingertips raw from scrubbing pans. But in the early mornings, when the city was still quiet and the sky was just beginning to change color, I opened my laptop. I had a goal: learn enough UX design and front-end development to land my first client within 6 months. It didn't matter that I had no degree in tech. Didn't matter that I didn't have a fancy laptop. Didn't matter that I was still sleeping on a borrowed futon in my friend Asha's spare room. What mattered was, I was done waiting for rescue. I built a portfolio out of imaginary companies, made prototypes for non-existent apps, redesigned real websites just to prove I could. I posted my work on freelancer sites, offering discounts so low I almost hated myself, but I got my first client, a nutrition coach who needed a landing page. $75. 2 days of work. I cried when I got the payment confirmation. Not because of the money, because it was mine. Earned without begging, without shame. It was the beginning of something I never had before, self-worth that didn't depend on anyone else. A few months later, I landed a retainer gig with a small business owner. Then another. Then another. Word spread in quiet corners of the internet, not viral, not flashy. Just whispers. She's fast. She listens. She delivers. Eventually, I had enough to move out of Asha's place. I rented a small studio, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I painted the walls myself, bought a second-hand desk and a used espresso machine, lit a candle on the first night and whispered, "This is your second life. Make it better than the first." And I did. Within 2 years, I was running a small design agency from my apartment. Just me and 2 part-time freelancers I hired from the same forums I once begged for gigs on. I never posted pictures, never announced milestones, never let my family know what I was doing, because I didn't need applause. I needed peace. I kept my head down, stayed in my lane, built a reputation based on reliability and clean work. But every now and then, I checked their social media. Derek was still the golden boy. My parents still posted family dinners, birthday parties, all without me. Their captions full of praise for him. Our future, they called him. I didn't feel jealous. I felt free. Because I wasn't in those pictures for a reason. And that reason was the very thing that gave me room to rise. They pushed me out. And I used that space to build a life they'd never be able to access, no matter how much they knocked. And I didn't realize just how far I'd come until the day their world fell apart. It started with a headline. I was on my 3rd client call of the day, sipping lukewarm coffee, finalizing a prototype, when a Slack message from my assistant popped up. "Hey, isn't this your brother?" She included a link. Local news. Nothing flashy. Just a stark, clinical headline. Tech consultant arrested for wire fraud, money laundering in ongoing federal investigation. My stomach dropped. I clicked it. And there it was. His name. Derek J. Mercer. My brother. Smiling in a blurry booking photo, like he didn't realize the world was already catching fire behind him. $1.4 million. That's what he was accused of embezzling from small tech startups, taking investments, over-promising results, and funneling the money through fake shell companies. The perfect son. The one they bet everything on. The one who replaced me. Fraud. Lying. Stealing from people who had trusted him. I sat back in my chair. Not shocked. Stunned. Not because he got caught. I always knew Derek was reckless. But because for once, the world was finally seeing the truth they refused to see. By nightfall, the story spread. 3 clients dropped him publicly. 2 startups he was consulting for issued press releases. A private Facebook group for local tech founders began sharing warning posts, screenshots, horror stories. And then came the avalanche. My phone lit up. Not with congratulations or celebration, but with messages from numbers I hadn't seen in years. My mom, my dad, my grandfather, all texting variations of the same line. "Can we talk? We're going through something." We didn't know where else to turn. I didn't respond, because just 2 years earlier, I had been the shame of the family, the girl who wasted their money, the daughter who should have been more like Derek. Now, they needed me, because Derek's bail was set at $250,000. He had no income, no clean record, no fallback. And suddenly, the daughter they discarded looked like the only one with a functioning business, a clean name, and the kind of credibility they could use. Not love, not celebrate, use. I got an email the next morning. From my father. Subject line, "Please." Inside, just one paragraph. "You've always been strong. I know we haven't always been supportive, but we're family, and your brother is in trouble. If there's anything you can do to help with his situation, it would mean a lot. I reread it 3 times. Then I closed the email and deleted it. No anger, no satisfaction, just stillness. Because this wasn't victory. It was validation. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need revenge. They had already punished themselves by betting everything on a lie and turning their backs on the truth. The daughter they said was a disappointment was now the only one standing, and they were just beginning to understand what that meant. I didn't respond to my father's email, so they started calling. First Mom, then Grandpa, then Derek. He left a voicemail. His voice, the same arrogant tone I'd heard all my life, now cracked, shaken. Jazz, I messed up. I need you. They're saying I need a clean cosigner or a character witness.
Please.
I know I haven't always. Just call me back, okay?
I didn't. Not yet.
I wanted to remember how they treated me when I needed help. When I was drowning, barely breathing, and asked for just 1 month's rent. I remembered Mom's voice, clear as glass. You're on your own now. And now here they were, on the edge.
Desperate.
And I was the only rope. They started showing up everywhere. Mom emailed again, long, dramatic, begging. I was wrong. I said awful things. But you don't let family fall apart. You're better than this.
Please.
Just help us. That line. You're better than this. That's what manipulators say when their cruelty catches up to them. As if I owed them grace for the pain they delivered without blinking. As if being better meant letting them use me again. But I didn't respond. Because silence was the most honest language we'd ever spoken in that family. And I was finally fluent in it. Then came the flowers. They were left at my office. No card. Just a note scribbled on the back of a pharmacy receipt. We're sorry. Please forgive us. Your brother needs you. I laughed out loud when I read it. Because they didn't say I mattered. They said he needed me. Even now, I was just a tool to protect their prize. But that prize was rotting. Every day, more press emerged. Leaked texts, emails, statements from former clients. Derek's face became a symbol, not of brilliance, but of betrayal. And suddenly, my name was popping up too. Articles started noting. His sister Jasmine Mercer, a rising UX entrepreneur, has no known involvement. Even that stung them. Because the world was drawing a line between us. And for once, I was on the side they couldn't touch. I got a call from a podcast that interviewed women in tech. They asked if I'd like to tell my story. I said yes. And at the end of that episode, I said, sometimes the people who bury you are the same ones who turn to you when their house burns down. But the truth is, if you didn't matter when they were safe, you don't owe them anything when they're falling. The clip went viral. And suddenly, their inboxes were as full as mine, but not with offers. With judgment. Is this the same daughter you shamed online? How's the golden boy now? Must hurt to watch the one you threw away shine. That week, I received one last email. From Derek. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I sat with it for a moment. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote back. But not with what they wanted. They didn't call ahead. They just showed up. I was in my office, reviewing a wireframe with my team, when my receptionist buzzed me. Jasmine? There's a woman and 2 men downstairs. They say they're your family. Should I? I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the window, watching the city breathe, calm, distant mine. Then I said, don't let them up. But I'll come down. They were waiting in the lobby. My mother, in her best blouse, as if dressing the part could undo what she'd done. My father, standing stiff, like pride was a sickness he couldn't cure, even now. And Derek, wearing that same hollow look from the news photo, but this time, he looked smaller, almost real. I stepped into the space like I was walking onto a stage I built with my own hands, because I had. They turned when they saw me. My mother gasped softly. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. Derek didn't even lift his head. No one spoke.
So I did.
You wanted to see me.
Say it.
My mother stepped forward.
We made a mistake.
We should have been there. I was scared, Jasmine. I didn't know how bad it was. We thought. I held up my hand. You thought I'd disappear. And I did. But you didn't expect I'd build something better than what you gave me. She blinked. We were wrong. I turned to my father. Do you remember what you said to me the night you cut me off?
He didn't speak. So I repeated it for him.
You said, we won't waste another dollar on a failure.
You didn't just cut me off. You cut me out.
He looked at the floor. Derek stepped forward. I didn't know they did all that.
I was caught up in my own mess.
I'm not asking you to forgive me. I need help. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder.
Thick. Crisp. Heavy.
I handed it to Derek. What's this? Everything you missed while you were busy being the golden child. Inside were screenshots of old texts, voicemails where they mocked me, a printed list of every time I helped the family financially, unreturned. And at the very back, the email I sent from the hospital, the day they told me I was on my own. I looked at all of them. You don't need a sister.
You need a lifeline.
And I'm not that anymore. My mother whispered, You're our daughter. I shook my head. I was. And when I needed you most, you didn't see a daughter. You saw an inconvenience. Derek opened the folder. Read the first page. His lips parted, just slightly. They looked frozen. Not from rage. From clarity. For the first time, they saw what they had done, all in one place. Black ink. White paper. No escape. I turned. You wanted a mirror? Here it is. Look at yourselves. And I walked away.
Past them.
Past their silence. Past the years I spent begging in my own mind for a moment like this. No more guilt. No more anger. Just peace. Because when they asked me to come back, all I had to offer was the truth. And that was far more than they ever gave me. The morning after the lobby visit, I woke up to dozens of messages. Friends. Clients. Strangers. They'd seen the podcast clip. The one where I said, if they didn't love you when you were quiet, broke, and bleeding, don't hand them your peace when you've healed. It had gone viral. Shared on TikTok, quoted on Instagram, stitched with stories from women across the world, daughters, sisters, black sheep, people who had been erased,
dismissed,
told they were a burden. And now, they were holding the mic. That clip opened the door to something bigger, a TEDx invitation.
Not to talk about tech,
but about resilience. The title they gave it? The Day I Became My Own Family. I stood on stage in a blood-red suit and black heels, my quiet rebellion against every dress like a good girl command I grew up with. And I told the truth. I talked about how people only love you when you serve a function. How silence becomes survival. How we convince ourselves that staying small is the price of belonging. And I told them what I learned. Some people will only call you family when they need a scapegoat or a savior. And it's not your job to be either. The applause was deafening. After the talk, a girl about 20 hugged me so tightly, I thought I'd break. That was me, she whispered. Your whole story, that was me. That was the moment I realized. This was bigger than Derek. Bigger than my parents. Bigger than revenge. This was a revolution. I wasn't just rebuilding for myself anymore. I was giving others a blueprint. I launched a community called the Unchosen Daughters, a digital space where women who'd been pushed out could connect, heal, rebuild, rise. We provided mental health grants, career mentorship, legal aid for inheritance disputes, emergency housing for girls cast out by abusive families. Within 3 months, we had 18,000 members. And Derek? Still in jail. They tried one last time. His lawyer reached out, asking if I'd write a character letter for sentencing. They said my clean name, my successful image, could soften the judge's stance. I declined. Formally. Legally. Not with spite. With clarity. My brother does not belong to me, I wrote. I was not invited to his rise. I will not be enlisted in his fall. And I meant it. Because they taught me that family is conditional. But I learned how to build one that wasn't.
One woman at a time.
They came one last time. I was at my foundation's downtown event, a quiet evening of mentorship matches, success stories, and donated laptops for girls starting their first freelance careers. I had just finished speaking when I saw them across the room, my mom, dad, and grandpa. Older.
Softer.
Not just humbled, hollow. They didn't try to cause a scene. They waited until the crowd faded and approached slowly, like people who had learned the hard way that I no longer owed them softness. My father spoke first. We watched her talk. We've read the stories. You've done well. My mother nodded. We just wanted to say we're proud. And we're sorry. Grandpa stepped forward last.
We were wrong about you.
We were wrong to let you go. That was the first time he'd ever said something like that. And for the first time in years, I looked at them and didn't feel rage or hurt. I felt distance.
Peace.
Like I was standing on the shore while they were still lost at sea. Then my mom said it. Your brother, they're saying he might get 10 years. Unless we can show he's part of a stable family support system. If you could just talk to the judge or sign something, you'd be saving him. And that was it.
The ask.
After everything, they still couldn't come without needing something. Still couldn't just love me without a transaction. I looked at them, really looked and realized they hadn't come to make peace. They'd come to use me again. And this time, I was ready. I stepped closer.
Calm. Certain.
You told me I was on my own. They all froze. You told me I was a failure. That I brought shame. That I wasn't worth another dollar. You watched me drown and blamed me for the water. They didn't speak. So I kept going. Now you want me to save the son you worshipped while you erased your daughter. I paused. Then I leaned in, met their eyes one by one, and said, You're right. I was on my own. And so is he. Silence. Real, devastating silence. My mother blinked rapidly, lips parting. My father looked like he'd been punched. Grandpa closed his eyes. I turned and walked away. And this time they didn't follow. Because they knew. It was over. Later that night, I opened my laptop and typed the final words for my first book, a memoir that had already been picked up by a publisher. Title: On My Own, How I Became What They Tried to Bury. And the dedication? To every daughter they threw away. May your silence grow into a voice so loud, they can never pretend they didn't hear you. Because this story isn't just about what I survived. It's about what I built. Without them. In spite of them. Beyond them. They told me I was on my own. They were right. That's how I became untouchable.